a series called Mastering the Basics, and it is a series that takes a look at the life, mission, and ministry of Jesus through the eyes of one of his best friends, if not his best friend, John. And it's not necessarily the historical Jesus, but it's the Jesus that's alive in the world today. And so, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And so, I'm excited about it. This is the fourth week in our series, Mastering the Basics. And the past few weeks, we've asked questions like, were we created or did we evolve? Do miracles really happen, and can they happen for us? And last week, we talked about what does it mean to be born again? That used to have a kind of a negative connotation, and it may still have that, but those were out of Jesus' own mouth. And what does it mean to worship God, and how do we do that? Today, it's a topic that I hope is encouraging to you, because today we're going to be talking about, or we're going to be asking the question, is faith enough? And so I hope that you're encouraged by that discussion. And, this summer I want to present these questions. And yes, I'm going to advocate for a certain position, but ultimately I want you guys to decide for yourselves the answer to these questions. Friday morning I was driving down the street right here in front of Polo Park, driving down the street, and I was it was a beautiful day, and I'm headed out to work to finish the teaching, and the music's going, and I'm bumping to the beat. Everything's good. I'm lost in the music, and all of a sudden I look in my rearview mirror, and I see the blue lights, and I'm like, no, come on, no. And so, it's funny, I just talked about that a few weeks ago. So, blue lights are going, and the deputy sees me right here, just west of Polo Park, and he turns around, and I see him, and I'm like, oh man, this is not going to be a good day. And so I pull over, and I'm thinking, okay, do I tell him I'm a pastor? Do I tell him I'm a lawyer? Do I tell him I'm a pastor? Tell him I'm a lawyer. I'm like, no, bad idea. He'll probably arrest me, so not a good idea. I'm like, what do I say? And so I see him get out of his car, and he kind of came up to my passenger side, which was kind of like, okay. So I rolled my passenger window down as I saw him coming, and all I could think about saying was, Jesus, 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 Jesus. I said it like 10 times. I'm not sure if he heard me. I don't know that I wanted him to hear me, but I said it. He walks up to the window, and he says, can I, nice guy, can I show me your license? I was ready. I gave it to him. He looked at it, and he said, are you still a safe driver? And I said, I think so. He said, I'll be right back. So he goes back to mine. I'm thinking, okay, did I pay all my tickets? Is everything good? My license is not suspended. I don't want to go to jail. Not a good look. And so he comes back within just a few minutes, and he says, have a nice day. And I'm like, man, I was like, whoo. And I thought to myself, was I saying Jesus, Jesus, Jesus because I had faith or because I had fear? What do you think? Yeah, it's a little bit of both, and oh, gosh. I got to be careful what I talk about up here because I end up experiencing it out there. It brings to mind a truth that I think that we can all relate to. Many of us find out what we really believe when we're in trouble. And when we really want something or when we don't know what to do, we find out, hey, what are we made of and what it is that we put our hope and faith in. So I want to start as we're talking about, is faith enough? I want to give us a working definition of faith. And so in the New Testament of the Bible, in the book of Hebrews, it describes faith this way. It says this. There it is. All right. Faith is the confidence that what we hope for will actually happen. It gives us assurance about things that we cannot see. And when I look at that definition, I love that faith is about confidence, it's about hope, it's about assurance. Those are really powerful things. And those things are drivers of human behavior, and they motivate us to do the things in our life that we want to do. Confidence, hope, and assurance. But the question today is is faith enough? Is it enough for you to realize your dreams? Is it enough for you to restore your relationships? Is it enough for you to move from the safe zone to stepping out and doing what God's been asking you to do? Is it enough to fix your finances? Is it enough to live without fear? But did you know that there is a formula found in the Bible that answers those questions that we just talked about? And today we're going to look at 3 stories of people just like you and just like me that have discovered the answer to the question, is faith enough? And as we go through each of these stories, I want to encourage you and I want to challenge you to think about your own life in these stories. Because the people in these stories are people just like you and just like me. And Jesus is the same Son of God that he was then as he is today. In our first story, Jesus has an encounter with a man who's been paralyzed for 38 years, a long time. And when Jesus saw this man, he knew he'd been sick. But he asks him what appears to be a really obvious question. And let's check it out. It's found in John 5, chapter 6. And so when Jesus saw him, and he knew he had been ill for a long time, he asked them, would you like to get well? And that may seem like, well, what's wrong with that? Frank, would you like to get well? The guy's sick. Well, he hadn't walked in 38 years. His rear end was on the floor for 38 years. He had never stood up. He had never walked. He had been sick that entire time. And so for Jesus to see him, to know that he's paralyzed, and to ask him that question is curious. And why would he do that? And so Jesus asks him the question, would you like to get well? And obviously the man wants to get better, right? I mean, who wants to be on the rear end for 38 years like this man was? So he obviously wants to get better. But what the man desires and what he believes are inconsistent. Because we don't always believe for what we desire. And neither did this man. And how do we know that? Because of what and how he replies to Jesus. And he replies to Jesus with a 4-letter word that I think is a dream killer. It's a 4-letter word that I think is one of the worst 4-letter words that has ever been uttered. Here's what he says. I can't. As if he doesn't, and he doesn't know who's standing in front of him. I can't, sir, the sick man said. And then he goes on to list all the different excuses of why he can't. I've been sick 38 years. You're asking me a really dumb question. I can't. And I can't because A, B, C, and D. He's given them the facts, but Jesus is not interested in the man's facts. He's interested in the man's faith. Hey, no one's there to put me in the pool. Excuse number 1. The water bubbles up. Someone always gets there ahead of me. Excuse number 2. And I'm not being unsympathetic to his plight, but he doesn't realize who's standing in front of him and asking him the question. And the question wasn't just a rhetorical one. Jesus asked him a question because he was trying to get something out of this man. I can't, the sick man said. So Jesus doesn't respond to the man's doubt. Instead, he shows the man his power. Verse 8, Jesus told him, stand up, pick up your mat, and walk. So Jesus could have said, boom, you're healed. I'm the Son of God. You're healed. No. He gave him 3 specific instructions. He said, stand up, instruction number 1, pick up your mat, instruction number 2, and walk, instruction number 3. 3 specific instructions to this man. And when I think about this guy who's been paralyzed for 38 years, I think about me, and I think about some of the things that have weighed me down. I'll be 53 in August. What about you? You ever feel like this, man? Where you look at your life and you're like, man, I tried. It didn't work. I tried again and again. So therefore, I can't. And you forget the God that created you. I can't because it's too hard. I can't because it's been too long. I can't because it costs too much. I can't because my time has passed me by. I can't. If you do feel that way, I believe this. I believe that Jesus wants to do for you today what he did for that man 2,000 years ago. He wants to move you from not having faith, or let me put it this way. He wants to move you from doubt to faith, from inaction to action, and from weakness and surrender into your own fear, into victory. That's what he was trying to do with that man, and that's why this is forever recorded in the Bible. The Bible's not just a bunch of stories. It illustrates the power of God working through normal people like you and me, and that's why it's in there. It'll be contemporary today, and it'll be contemporary 10,000 years from now when we're no longer here. The Bible's always relevant to our situation. And so he asked the man if he wanted to get well because he wanted him to realize that the one who was asking him had the power to heal him. Jesus was challenging the paralyzed man to have faith in him. That was the first thing, faith. Man, I want you to have faith in me. I want you to realize who it is that you're talking to. But was the man's faith enough to heal him? Or was Jesus asking more of him beyond his mere belief? Let's see. Jesus gave the man 3 specific instructions. How did the man reply? I mean, we don't get a verbal reply beyond I can't, because after he says I can't, he does something about it. He doesn't say, I'm not going to try anymore. I've tried too many times. No, he actually does what Jesus asks him to do. He moves into action. He stood up, picked up his mat, and he walked. He didn't remain on the ground. And what was the result? The result was instantly the man was healed. The Bible says instantly he was healed. It wasn't a process of 6 months or a year or go to rehab or we're going to try in some artificial intelligence and we're going to get you to move. We're going to give you a prosthetic device. No. Instantly he was healed. And this man's story illustrates a powerful faith formula. And I would say a pattern. And the reason I say a pattern is because the Bible's filled with pictures and patterns. Filled with pictures and patterns. From the very beginning of Genesis to the book of Revelation, it's filled with patterns of how God moves in people's lives. And so when we read the Bible, you can read it and understand it, but there's also reading it to kind of, okay, what is happening here and how does this apply to my life? And what God does 6,000 years ago, he's still doing today. There's a pattern to God's love and his faithfulness, his grace and mercy and peace and forgiveness, all that. There's a pattern to that. And the Bible is this beautiful tapestry of how God interacts with us. It's patterns and pictures. And this man's story illustrates a powerful pattern and a formula that you and I can use to overcome every adversity in our life. Are you ready for it? Because I believe this is one of those principles that if you dare to apply this in your life, it can change your life. I don't say that often, but I believe in this so much that I know it will because I've seen it in our own lives. Here it is. Faith. Now, I would never do that. That's a cool picture. That's crazy. But it illustrates the point. Faith plus action equals results. That is the pattern. You look at all the heroes of the Bible, and there's a lot of them. God working in their lives, the heroes of the faith, this is how it's happened. They've had to have faith. They've had to move. And then God takes care of the results. And that doesn't mean that you always have to take action. Sometimes the action's prayer. Sometimes the action's to be still. But it requires you to do something. You know, to go to a place where God can work through your life. Faith and action. These two, they're brother and sister. They work together to accomplish God's desired result in your life. They work together. Faith and action working together. It's a constant push and a pull, and it's a tension. And Andy Stanley, he's the lead pastor of North Point, an incredible church that's impacted this country for decades. He said, if you manage the tensions in your life, you can lead a successful life and make an impact for God. It's managing the tensions in your life. And faith and action are always a tension. James 2:21-24 describes it this way. It's our second story. It says this, don't you remember that our ancestor Abraham was the father of the faith. This was the man that God called and said, hey, you're going to have a son, and I'm going to bless you, and your descendants are going to be as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the grains of sand on the seashore. A lot of people are going to come through you. And he said that to him when he was a pretty old dude. Well, I shouldn't say that. When he was older, when he was 75. And he had to wait for that promise for almost 25 years. He had a child at 25, and his wife was 100 years old as well. And she's laughing like, man, this is never going to happen. And Abraham believed God that he would have a son, and God gave him a son at almost 100 years old. God fulfilled his promise to him. That's the father of the faith. So it says here in James, don't you remember that our ancestor Abraham was shown to be right with God by his what? Right. When he offered his son Isaac on the altar. And this is a prelude and it's a foreshadowing of what Jesus did on the cross. Pattern. Okay? Pattern. This is a picture of Jesus on the cross. It's a picture of God offering his son, and he did it through people. He was showing the world what was to come. You are a man of faith, Abraham. I called you. Now, you asked me for a promise. I'm giving it to you. Now, will you give it back to me? And Isaac said, yeah, I will. And he went to sacrifice his son on the altar because he believed that God was able to resurrect Isaac. Another pattern, the resurrection of Jesus. Incredible. Let's keep going. He goes on to say, can we roll that back for just 1 second? Okay, let's keep going. Thank you. You see, his faith and his actions work together. We talked about that. His actions made his faith complete. Action and faith working together. Your faith and your actions work together to produce the results that you desire in your life. Your marriage, your relationships, your career, the desire to have a child, your calling, your finances, your future, all of it. Your faith and your action, they work together. They're inextricably linked, and God sees that, and he blesses that with his results that are always bigger and higher and greater than what we ever anticipated. Through all of it. Verse 23 and 24. And so it happened, just as the scriptures say, Abraham believed God. It's one of my favorite verses. Abraham believed God, and God counted him as righteous because of his faith. He was even called the friend of God. Incredible that Abraham is called the friend of God. Next verse. So you see, we are shown to be right with God by what we do, not by faith alone. So can we put up that slide again? It's not this alone. It's not action alone. It's the two of them working together so that God can work out the stuff in our life. And we've all got different stuff, right? We carry stuff around. We're still blaming other people. We're still feeling condemned about the mistakes we made last night and 25 years ago. And God says, if you will trust me by believing in me and taking the action that I'm moving you to take, I'm going to work this out in your life. I'm going to give you the courage to step out in faith and start that business, despite the fact that no one ever believed that you would ever do anything. Maybe even your parents didn't believe in you. But I do, because I created you. So you see, as the Bible says, it's faith and action working together. I want to end our time together by sharing our third story. We talked about the paralyzed man, and we talked about Abraham. And I know this third story well because it's mine, or I should say, it's ours. You know, when Olivia and I got engaged in 2002, we found a church home. We met, and we didn't go to church on a regular basis, so we decided, hey, we'd like to have a family one day, so I think step one, let's find a church home. And so we found Potential Church. We tried a bunch of other churches, a few, and we heard the first message, and we were hooked, and we never left for 15 years. It was Potential Church in Cooper City, Florida. I was practicing law, and Olivia was a court reporter at the time, and we were both serving at Potential. Olivia had served for 3 years before Nina was born inside of the children's ministry, and I was pretty just involved in the church, and the more I was there, the more services I attended, the more I was just a part of what was happening, the more I wanted to be there. So I was practicing law and serving, and I eventually became part of their executive leadership team in 2010. Our kids were born there, they were baptized there, they accepted Jesus there. We watched them in the early part of their life grow up in church, and we had dreams of raising a family. And we had dreams or I had a dream, I should say, of building a dream house. We had purchased 6 acres in a place called Southwest Ranches, kind of like Wellington. A lot of horses and barns. And so I wanted to build our dream house there. Our plan was to spend the rest of our lives in the Davie Southwest Ranches area and continue to go to potential church. But God had different plans. I was starting to feel a higher calling into ministry. As I got involved into leadership, I sensed that God wanted to do something with this calling beyond just serving. I sensed that He wanted for me to get fully engaged in ministry. And so I remember having a conversation with the lead pastor, Pastor Troy, and he essentially offered me the position to be the number 2 person at the church, the executive pastor. And I thought it was an incredible opportunity to help lead a church of several thousand people. I thought, man, I'm going to be able to have my cake and eat it too. I can build my law practice, and I can influence thousands of people, and internationally as well. And I'm like, man, this is incredible. I love it. I was so excited. I came home and I told Olivia, I'm like, yes, dream's coming true. God offered the position. She's like, you did what? What? Now, she was not feeling it. And so through a series of conversations and prayer, Olivia and I both, didn't have a peace about it. And so I had to say no, and that was a very difficult thing for me because I said no to what I thought was a God-ordained opportunity. And when I said no, I had no plan B. I had nothing to fall back on. I was like, man, I just said no to something that is just an amazing opportunity, and I have no other options to fall back on. So I felt this tension that I was talking about. God, what do you want me to do? I've had faith. I took action. And it's like, where do you want me to go? And what do you want me to do? Olivia and I didn't know where God was moving us, but we did know what God was doing. God was asking us, will you follow me? Will you have faith, even Frank and Olivia, when you don't see? Even Frank, Olivia, when you don't understand? Will you follow me? To not just believe, but to move. And move we did. We moved physically and in every way. We sold those 6 acres of land our family had. I had a dream about building a law firm, and I built this beautiful office building, sold that. We sold the only home we've ever lived in for 13 years. It was a brand new home when we moved in. We left everyone and everything we've known to go somewhere that we had no idea where we were going. We didn't know where God was moving us, but we knew God wanted us to move. The question that Jesus asked that paralyzed man, do you want to get well? Olivia and I sensed God was asking us the same thing. Will you follow me? And so the answer to that question has lifelong implications. And we said, God, we will follow you. And do you know why we did that? Why would any rational person do that? Leave a multi-million-dollar practice. I felt at times as if my dream had died, that it was dead, it was gone. Everything I'd ever hoped and wished for was done. You know why we did that? We're no heroes, not by a long shot. We did that because we believed that God gave us a promise that one day we would start a new church, and one day, despite present appearances, this church would impact this nation with the good news of Jesus Christ for His glory. Now, has our faith been enough to receive what God's promised? Of course not. No. But we had to take action.
We hope you enjoyed this message from Promise Life Chapel. Our prayer is that you would realize your God-given destiny. Lead pastors, Pastor Frank and Olivia Corral, and the Promise Life team would love to connect with you. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and for more information, check out gopromiselife.com.